The following is the first question and answer session for a show concept about the true nature of being and truth. This raw audio file, the first of many, represents the beginning of a larger process, taking the shared thoughts and perspectives recorded, molding them into something called transmissions from the galactic core. In the meantime, this open forum is a meeting of many minds who became as one. The topics vary, ranging from the personal to the galactic, from the simulation to the insinuation of self, from the fantastic to the mundane, from confusion to truth. But, as always, it is the story of this species, as it was at the time of great change. Some may call this awakening, for others enlightenment. Still, for others, it was the end. And so, a new beginning. This is Transmissions from the Galactic Core.
Initiating construct. Loading conceptual framework.
Opening doors.
Establishing matrix self-recognition parameters.
Transmissions from the Galactic Core.
This call is being recorded.
Yes, did you have a question?
I mean, were you about to? Are we going to do? I have a question. So, how are we doing this? Are we going to just get into more truth, or is it going to be like an open? Should we just start asking questions, like open forum type?
Let's do open forum, and then we're going to go where it develops. Okay. So nuts and bolts, right? Welcome to Transmissions from the Galactic Core. That's the name that I came up with. All of my discarnate friends and pals, and I like it a lot. Basically, what it means is that, all of us here, we are inhabiting, the thought flesh of a human vessel, and we're constantly like changing channels on a television station or television. We're constantly moving in and out of one presence to another, and it's kind of like ingredients. So there's a mixture, right? So I could use words to describe it, but ultimately the words are not important, right? We're just visiting. We're strangers with a door key, and so it's kind of like a transmission. We're just bilocating from one place to another, moving our consciousness around, our awareness, because not really consciousness. Consciousness is more local. Consciousness is what happens when your awareness inhabits a physical body, like the one that you're currently in right now, or that you perceive yourself to be currently within. Whatever, doesn't matter, right? So this is our first show. And basically, I'm presenting myself, and all of our friends who've decided to join us are here also offering themselves to a collective experience, to a sharing of one another's lives, our thoughts, our personal spaces, our galactic notions, but more than that, our humanity, and our unique experience from a very the very personal position of being quote unquote awake, aware, and alive. We're sharing that with one another, and we're offering that to whomever out there in the quantum realms of future and past and alternate timelines and alternate worlds can listen to this and hear us and reach out and are looking for someone who can voice their concerns, and we're going to offer ourselves to them. And we're going to discuss and just share with one another in a very frank and clear and concise, hopefully, but if not, hey, whatever, we'll do whatever is necessary. We're going to offer ourselves to them in service, in compassion, and in gratitude for all that they do and all that we do. So I want to thank you all with that same gratitude. So, having said that, let's begin. So, who has a question or who has something they want to share?
How about the word conjure?
Thank you.
The word conjure?
Conjure.
What about the word conjure?
One who conjures.
Make something appear unexpectedly or seemingly from nowhere as if by magic. The archaic description is implore someone to do something, and then on the other hand, it's to call upon or command by invocation or spell. which suggests alchemy. It suggests unintended consequences. It seems other than manifesting or generating. It feels different, and I'm wondering if that triggers anybody.
Well, I can tell you the thing that pops out most for me, and there's a lot in there, obviously, is just the notion of the concept of manipulation and control, right? Of viewing reality or viewing the world or having the intent to do something upon something else that feels external or separated, to guide it or to manipulate it from its current state into something else. No, I know that there's definitely a bunch of other ways to go about this, to look at this differently. I mean, from an alchemical point of view, if Jason wants to join in, he can definitely tell you a lot more about that. But I mean, to me, like whenever I hear someone talk about, conjuring or like spell casting or anything of that nature, the very first thing that pops into my head is this person feels separated, right? They have a concept of self. They're asleep in their individuality. Their personality is reinforcing the idea that the world is something that is somehow out of control, that needs to be bettered or fixed, and that it falls either upon them or whomever it is that they wish to follow to then go about fixing or correcting a perceived mistake, right? So to me, when I think of the word conjure, I think, most people, Paul, you have a lot of static, buddy. There you go. Thanks. I think,
to do something. Isn't that what alchemy does, is implore us to do something?
No. It doesn't do that.
Transmutation. More of a transmutation of, of oneself kind of like to another, through a process. And it's, it's a beautiful process, but I think it's always a continuously changing thing kind of thing. I don't know. That's how I've been looking at it.
Well, I mean, it's about
making something appear unexpectedly or seemingly from nowhere as if by magic. Isn't that also alchemy? No.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like you, and then I appreciate where you're coming from. It really is a good topic to start with. It's okay. So
I feel like, if I may,
yes, go ahead.
The way you sound like you're putting it is bringing something from nothing, whereas alchemy follows the law of equivalent exchange, taking something and changing it into another. So there is never, nothing. Alchemy to me is almost like just focusing on a growth that's already happening, and it's just bringing light and attention to it and then amplifying it. I don't know.
Well, the alchemy that we're, involved with is about purification, right? So I like your response, but ultimately we're not going anywhere. There's no sense of movement from one thing to another, right? We're not. I mean, that concept, although it is a useful concept, it's a concept that is akin to wearing a cast over a broken limb, right? It's the very definition of what is expedient. It's a pragmatic concept that allows a form of consciousness that has a certain set of beliefs to accept and process what would otherwise seemingly be or would appear to be a quote-unquote magical event, right? Something that defies or works outside of the regular notions of the laws of a system. I won't say the laws of science, because that's more of a human concern, right? The laws that govern the simulation, right? When in fact, there really isn't anything that does that. I mean, if there's something that could quote-unquote violate the rules or laws of a system, it just means that it's operating on a higher set of laws. So I suppose technically you could say, if the gloves do not fit, you must acquit, but it's still the same laws upon which all the systems are built upon, just a higher level of them, or at least someone who is an initiate on those higher levels. But so we are ourselves not trying to move into a sense of like a higher spiritual form. You already are higher spiritual forms, right? You're currently inhabiting a falsity. You're making a choice to be within a body, right? Making a choice to assume a simulated self, right? Not just a simulated world, but a simulated self. You're making that choice every moment that you are here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And it's being done on, on the higher levels of your own mind, which are the subconscious levels, which, according to the biases of this world, are considered to be the weaker parts, but they're actually the stronger who you are actually is. This is more your conscious awareness as you perceive yourself right now is more like the petals on a blossom or on a flower, whereas the roots, the trunk of the plant, that's where all the work is done. That's where all of the process and procedure is. So, I mean, the alchemy isn't doing anything necessarily to you to like bring about something that isn't already there. It's just bringing it forward, right? It's not making you a higher being. It's revealing the being, the inhabiting, indwelling being that is animating you forward. It's making you a better conduit, right? I mean, magic is cool. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that I don't think about magic. Of course I do. I mean, I love superhero movies. I love the idea of flying, but those are notions of a human being, of a limited perspective, of a grounded and self-belief riddled notion of awareness that is constantly looking for ways to overcome perceived obstacles, right? It's constantly looking for ways to overcome some sickness or a notion of something being incorrect, right? That's not what it is. I mean, if you're sick with purpose. If your car dies on the interstate and you pull over and your tire blows out and you try to make a call to a friend to come pick you up and your cell phone dies, it's with purpose. It's not random, right?
Yeah, but
And the question though really is,
but conjuring can be done with full notion that it's not separate. You can conjure yourself. You can conjure yourself into a situation that you desire, using all kinds of techniques. There are tons of techniques that enable you to register your intent into the play and have the play morph into exactly what you want.
So you're thinking more along the lines of like law of attraction kind of stuff?
No,
like I want $1 million.
Not law of attraction. It's you can call it magic. You can call it radionics tries to do some of that. You can mix all of those things together that just anchors your intent into a kind of framework of a reality. And then it will precipitate in some ways, surprisingly, I've had the experience where it's frightening how accurate or how exactly it turns out.
Well, your thoughts
and
become
it's not
the
because
world.
It's not because I think I have created something that is separate from me. I fully embrace the fact that myself as an experience is part of that creation. That it's happening, it's not just happening to the others, but it's happening to me. And,
right.
I often come back to the one question, and I think I asked Jason this many, many years ago in the Blue Emerald. Are there any others?
Any other what?
People. I mean, if the notion of other, you started out with saying this is all not real.
Well, there's a couple ways. Go ahead.
I must say, I have a problem every time I hear that phrase, that this is not real, it doesn't matter. it must matter, absolutely. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having the experience.
I can't tell you how many times I've said this myself.
So
It's awesome.
it's kind of like a cop-out to say it doesn't matter.
Right. Well, okay. I'm going to give you a cop-out, right? Reply. And I agree with you, and that's beautiful. But it's, the problem with words is that it's like trying to build it's like having a concept of trying to build a skyscraper and only using a dull blade. We have a concept of a transference of data packets, of communication, of communion that is so far beyond what is possible with words. But yeah, here we have words. We got sporks and dull knives. So let's try to build a skyscraper. So yeah, you know what? Being here, it has purpose. There is a reason for you to be here, without question. You're right. If there wasn't, we wouldn't be here. If there wasn't some galactic aim, if there wasn't some larger plan, if there wasn't some machination behind the scenes, an unseen force underneath the glove giving you the hint of the hand that explained and excused the reason why fingers moved.
Why does somebody play chess? Why do two people sit down and play chess?
To strategize.
To play a game of chess has as much doesn't matter to it as all of creation.
I've been thinking about an idea like that lately because as someone who loves chess, black or white, it doesn't matter.
I mean, you can say the same thing about sporting events. You can say the same thing about any of it. Of course, there's a purpose. They're there to win the game. They're there to compete. They're there to become stronger. They're there to become better. They're there to observe. They're to learn, and so on and so forth. But in the all of creation, it doesn't matter at all.
I totally get that and accept that.
There's nothing at stake. That's the one thing that is of utmost importance to understand is there's absolutely nothing at stake. But you cannot learn what you set out to learn without that seeming to be true.
Or kind of believing the illusion type of thing, right?
Well, yeah,
it wouldn't happen unless you thought you had to do it, right?
And you have to believe
like
it.
A mission.
But it's one of those kinds of things, it isn't entirely different being on this level of reality than it is in a dream. I mean, they're very similar, extraordinarily similar. And so in your dream, for instance, you could be going along in some dream experiences that is coherent enough to, for instance, have a story being told, right? And then the neighbor across the street starts the lawnmower, and that becomes a stimulus that changes the dream, and it goes off into a direction that was totally unexpected. And it now has its own story elements where, for instance, in your dream, as it was being experienced, the lawnmower maybe becomes a jet, and now you're jetting off to some foreign land in your dream.
So Jason, the whole notion of story and the need or the kind of there's a human thing that is predisposed to being attached to story. But is there really a need for a story?
We'll take the story out, and what do you have?
You have something you can't speak about. But
nothing.
You take the story out, you have absolutely nothing.
It's not that you don't have nothing. You don't have something that you can relate to at a human level. But there is something there. There's a beingness that is there without story.
No, there's not.
You can't talk about it. You can't relate to other people.
If there's no book on the shelf, do you have any things to like talk about or read?
Well, we might
like
have
that.
some sort of difference in an understanding or semantics here, but you have either nothing or you have story.
Okay. The thing about story is that it's intertwined with the notion of time. Sequentially. Story implies sequential events.
Maybe in your consciousness it does.
Exactly. Well, the notion of story, as we're talking about, is always, relating to other people. The notion of story always has to have logical relationship between objects.
Sure. But how does that all comport with the idea that you have 1,000 lives going on as we speak?
Right, a multiverse of
1,000 stories
a quantum domain.
Yeah. I kind of like.
But think about what you're saying, right?
Almost all of which, by the way, are taking place in realms where there is no linearity.
Right, we're just in a local story. We're in a localized. Our consciousness right now is centered in a particular trajectory where you're Paul.
Yeah.
Well, consider this. Maybe this gets to the point a bit. Logic and linearity, what really they're talking about is the details, right? The facts, the specifics. If there are many thousands of you, or let's say an infinite number of you, right, with small details and changes and variations in the facts, but yet they're all simultaneously as true as your unique experience and all of its facts, then what value or what purpose would there be in holding to a concept of logic one thing? Why can't facts be all things? Why can't you also be a woman? Why can't you also be younger or older, right? Why can't you also be bald? Why can't you also have had an accident when you were 14 and you lost both your legs, or etc.? Are the facts? The facts aren't. The facts are just they're artifacts. They're elements of your particular dream. Of the world that has been constructed for you to believe in, for you to accept, has nothing to do with anything but providing you with the necessary stimuli that then allows you to have a concept of self that allows you to inhabit your story and have a concept of moving forward with it, right? Because all of the details, they compel you to view things in a specific way. And then ultimately, what we're really trying to do with story is to mold a perceptual framework, right? To give you a concept that kind of puts you into a specific box where perceptually you then perceive the world, and everything is perception. Everything is perception. And in a world where you accept that, the only thing that there is perception, then there doesn't have to be a strict adherence to the concept of facts or logic. There doesn't have to be. A dream is as real as the quote unquote real life, as the waking life, right? The quantum possibilities, the other timelines, the other alternate dimensions and realities, the etheric realms, they're all as real and unreal. They're all as fictional as this world. So then where's the strength and power in a fact? What then becomes of logic? When logic itself becomes an antiquated notion, it's no longer necessary in order to truly perceive what it is that's actually happening, not just in your one discrete example of life, which is only a portion of your life, of the many versions of you that there are. Right, but it's only one small fragment of the larger diamond, of the larger experience, of the larger perceptual realm. Does that help? Does that make sense?
In a dream, I am aware that I am alone.
In the dream, you assume you're alone.
Well, I know that I'm dreaming and that all these people I'm seeing are somehow manufactured by some mechanism in my dream.
You are the mechanism.
Exactly. So that's why I ask. In this life we call, or this experience we call awakened reality, are there other people?
No more nor less than there are in your dreams.
Yeah, I was also, I think it's still assuming. I mean, you say, I know, I'm in my dream and I know I'm dreaming. But, there's no real way to prove that. So it is assuming.
That's the notion. That's the concept I cannot grasp very well. That the fact that I know in this waking dream that I am it, but I just can't grasp the idea that I'm actually totally alone in the world, and that, for example, chance is not real, but a projection of my mind.
One and the same.
Well, the difference, Winnie, is that when you're asleep and dreaming, you're producing everything that's in your dream. Now, if you were to invest every single one of those characters in your dream with the ability to communicate and talk with each other, and we've all had dreams. I've had dreams where there were 10,000 people in the dream, and it was a concert, and everybody was talking to each other. Everybody's behaving normally, and in fact, it was, wildly enough, on a completely different planet, and it was majorly cool. And so it was no different in that situation. But now you're just asking who's doing the dreaming, and the fact is it's still you, Winnie, doing the dreaming. It's not just you doing the dreaming. It's so hard to explain this. There is a dreamer that is dreaming all of us right this second. Okay, and that being could be, in fact, let's say a single soul for half of this planet's population.
Okay.
And so the only leap that has to be made is when you, if as an example, you're going to try to break it down into, visual components or mathematics or whatever, helps it all to make sense. If, as an example, you go one octave or layer or level or whatever, because what you are is a Winnie layer. There is a Winnie layer, and then there is one layer up that has to exist in order to be a mechanism to step down the immense energies that are contained within that one being, who is, the soul, if you will. I can't stand that word, but we'll use it, of that many people. And so when somebody says, well, why would I do that? Why did that person do that, or whatever? And the answer is, well, because you chose it. That choice is being made by another layer of you.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so if you've got, let's say, 6, 8, 10, it doesn't even really matter the number that you choose, layers between you and, that super self that is actually the kind of, I don't know, I've seen the word oversoul before. And so that's really kind of it.
So we're in a shared dream.
Okay.
We're in a dream.
A dream.
And we have shared vision, basically.
Well, there's.
Or would that imply individuality when there really isn't,
Well, shared
ultimately?
illusion.
Well, it's
Maybe one way to look at it is this: is you can say the nature of what is being dreamt determines the simulation of the experiences that appear to be shared or appear to be inhabited by quote unquote distinct other beings, right? So in other words, there's a version like it's like a compartmentalized dream. Part of the dream is it's dreaming itself as though it were compartmentalized into discrete areas and regions, right? It's dreaming that it's creating a functional basis by which then it can proceed to further investigate itself through further dreaming. But really, it's just the same dream. It's like saying, okay, I'm having a dream, and in my dream that I'm dreaming there are 4 dreamers, or in reality there's 12 dreamers, right? So those 12 dreamers then are all each I'm dreaming, they're all dreaming different ways of looking at the same dream. And so they start dreaming and they start interacting, and they then splinter off, but it's still the same one dream, but they're just creating the next layer of the dream, but it's the same one dream.
Okay.
Fractally.
It's kind of like
Fractally.
So, Jason, how does
I
one
mean,
get through the layers to get to the super being?
How does one get through those layers?
Yeah, is it through the dream state
What
or?
what if somebody were to tell you that that you yourself set it up, that you're not even supposed to be able to do it? See, the whole point of the experience itself is to enter into a situation where you are to experience separation. And so in this case, for instance, it was all set up, so beautifully that space itself can be defined by distance between objects, right? That isn't true, but that's how it works perceptively, and that is the programming. And the big U separated itself off for the express purpose of experiencing this without access to it, to its own self.
Well,
And
that's just
so,
crazy.
well, how else
That's no fun.
how else is one going to experience itself? How else is it going to do it?
It's pretty fun.
And the real leap that has to be made by most people is to truly understand, those who are, on the path to awakening, because, another really important thing to understand is that you wouldn't believe the effort it takes to keep people asleep. You've got all the 3D evolutioners that are moving through a very specific plan where if even one of them woke up, it could be dangerous for all the rest of them. And so there are very specific purposes going on here, and that in the entire gang of 3D evolutioners must be kept asleep. They must believe in their Jesuses and all of that is so important to keep in place. You wouldn't believe it, and yet here you are, vastly more awake than your neighbor, right? And then there is one layer up from you is another being that is essentially you, who's vastly more awake than you are. This is the role you're playing. Is this Jackie?
Yes, it is.
This is the role that you're playing. This is the Jackie role. And the multiplicity of self has 12,000 other roles. Let them do what they're doing and pretend to be super beings and pretend to be those that fly and pretend to be those that create galaxies, and let Jackie pretend to be what she's being.
What am I supposed
So all the
to
more
be
reason
in my?
to surrender?
Pardon me?
So all the more reason to just surrender?
Well, in my way of thinking, because I'm really just explaining everything that I've experienced myself, through direct experience, is that to get absolutely perfect with where you are, because that is the only goal there is, truly, in terms of awakening. Surrender is a necessary step. The beauty of surrender is that you can't change anything anyway, period. And so why fight it?
You would only be fighting yourself.
You know what I mean? And so the surrender is really just finally, giving it all up and just going with the flow. I can tell you without, reservation that it's an absolutely unbelievably beautiful way of being. And
Well, I want to say this, not that I follow this, but this approach is to be okay with where you are is so like the anti-Tony Robbins approach, where, you must always overcome what you perceive as being mediocre about you.
well,
So,
I don't know that being okay with where you are is what I said. I'd say if I can amend what I meant, I would say that being ecstatic about exactly where you are and in total acceptance of everything exactly as it is a beautiful, balanced, very high level way of being in 3D Earth. Because it's really hard to be on a higher level in 3D Earth than where we are in it.
I think that's where my question comes in. Not to derail your train of thought, Jason, but
go ahead.
See, I have been struggling with that balance is being becoming either ecstatic or just okay, and then getting to ecstatic about being where I am. At the same time, there's a part of me that wants to contribute to the awakening through some sort of art. And the last couple of years, it's been kind of building this momentum to find that art or that outlet. And at the same time, keeping that in mind of like, well, not living for the future of this art, creation, but being okay and or ecstatic about not having that art form, being okay with or ecstatic about where I am perfectly right now, which is absolutely no art other than maybe movement art through yoga or martial arts. So.
Okay.
I guess
so what's your question?
I guess the question is multi-layered, but is there a point to creating art to get to a feeling of being more productive in the awakening of, the collective consciousness?
Well, sure, there might be. It just depends on what your design is. It's serial killer is happiest when he's killing.
Would that be the same as when they have those competitive eaters and they're having, scarfing down 50 hot dogs? It's like
in this immense puzzle, that is comprises, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of sentient beings. There aren't any two alike. I mean, I sound like one of those friggin' gurus out there. But the fact is that it is a puzzle, and if you move one part of the puzzle, then another part of the puzzle is going to move, and there aren't any two that have precisely the same function or position. And so, if as an example, you were, let's say that you were your art was at a pretty high level, and but you weren't, happy, and you kind of knew it, and you might think that, I need to find a girlfriend, or you think that you need something, and all you do need to do really is clear away everything that you have anchored, that you could say is the iceberg below the surface of the water. And you are, for instance, you could say this the superconscious of what you have lodged in your entire state of being. Okay. And a lot of it isn't necessarily yours, but if it is an example, all you did was set out to clear all of that away, and understanding all the while that there are timings involved with clearing that stuff away, because your own higher guides aren't going to let you get too clear, too powerful, too fast, because there is a very delicate balance in this entire experiment of people that need to stay asleep while we do our work to help, energetically everything that's going on, and help them to make the choice of selfless or selfish, and so on and so forth. And so if, as an example, you could stand there and think, well, I need to be clear of everything right this second. That means that you're not perfect with it. Right. And therefore you can give yourself over to a larger process. It's very clearly a larger process that is way beyond the scope of your intellect, and leave it up to other beings to just sort of guide and do what they do, because they're doing their part just like you're doing your part. And follow your intuition, and follow your heart, and follow your excitement. And if you do that, you can't go wrong ever, period. And and then, if, as an example, in the broader perspective, the way that the Renaissance happened was through art and science. It's because all the great masters belonged to the secret societies, and they embedded sacred geometry within all of the paintings. And so people were being spoken to on a level that they weren't even conscious of.
And they were using alchemy.
And yeah, well, of course, the top players were making and using alchemy, but the way that Renaissance got brought about was through art and science.
So yes, do your art. I mean, what permission do you need?
Right? He wasn't asking for permission. I think he was just asking for a little bit of perspective on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think
what it is to be ecstatically perfect with everything as it is.
And part of that is, where I get a little confused is because I've slowly been getting rid of more and more things in my life, objects, just because, I know why they're there, and then I realize why they're there, and then I get rid of them. And to do this art, it's to bring more things, in to my possession, and then at the same time, I'm just like, why would I do that? I don't understand. You know what I mean?
I'll give you a quote. Joni Mitchell once said in an interview, "Art is a lie. It stands for artifice. It's a lie that brings you closer to the truth." So you should pursue the lie in order to get close to the truth. Yeah.
I was going to say, if whoever was talking about art, I think I know who it was, but I used to kind of really look upon artists I thought so. People who were super talented and had like this kind of amazing genius, that was like what gave them value, or they thought that too. Like, I'm someone because I have this talent or ability, or I'm productive. And I really got to clear vision of how you're not what you do, and how those things don't really mean anything ultimately in terms of what could bring you joy or happiness. Like, just because that person was super gifted at something didn't mean that they were free. And they were also profoundly unhappy people and used their gift to try to attract praise or love from other people. Like, it was and so if you get fully good with like yourself, and then just kind of follow your curiosities and what, the value that those things impart to your life. Like, does this bring me excitement? To me, those are worthy material things, to invest in, or to actually have. But I get, like, feeling weighed down by so much stuff, and we could all, get rid of some material baggage and things like that. But I just wanted to say, like, um, start with being good with where you are, and then like follow the curiosity and excitement. And then I feel like those two things together are like just rock solid gold, and go for it. That's my 2 cents.
There's something that
Thank you.
dovetails perfectly with what Mary was just saying, and I was gonna say it a little bit ago, Jonathan. It's kind of like this: if as an example, in any action that you do, let's say where you pick up yet another piece of something that is now a part of your life, right? And you said, well, why do I want that? Why do I need that? The more salient question, the more penetrating question is, why was that needed of me? Do you see what I mean?
Kind of, yeah.
Because it'll represent an energy that is the realer part of the story than whatever reason you picked it up. You see what I mean? And so that's what makes people so unknowable in so many ways in this world. It's like, instead of questioning why you yourself did something, the question really is, well, why was that needed of me to do that energetically in this way?
Okay. So, I suppose, no, go ahead.
Well, in its so if you take a personality element like Mary was just talking about, where, for instance, a great artist is, born with an intrinsic need for adoration, because that's exactly what fuels his or her production of the art. The production of the art is what the gang upstairs wants done. They don't care what the personality needs in order to get it done.
Okay.
There's a shrewdness to it all, to the equation. Just get her done. This is what we need. We need this accomplished. Because they're looking at variables in an equation.
Who's we and who's the group upstairs?
The group upstairs are all the people that are invisible to us on this plane with our senses, who are, from a larger perspective, orchestrating what's going on this planet. And that layer includes every one of us in other forms.
And what would you, or is that what we label angels and archangels and all that kind of?
No, they don't need labels. They're just people.
Are they doing this from the future?
Maybe from the perspective that we have, yeah. But they're third density is the only layer that actually has time. Linear time. And so, you know, third density occupies about 1/100 trillionth of the full scope and pantheon of consciousness. And so time just isn't anything, you know, they/we can't even relate to what that is or what it means. But if, as an example, you know, they were to find a way to get into this level and present themselves in some visual, sentient way to us, then they would have to call upon information banks that describe what time is in order to present to you the fact that I have come to you from your future. Or what you would perceive to be your future.
What would perceive to be, yeah, exactly. And is it possible to communicate with them or one in particular?
It's more than possible. I'm never not doing it.
Well, Jason, I would love to be doing it. How do I do
it? Are you in the ABS training?
Yes.
How far along are you in it?
Well, actually, I got into it, and then my life kind of like took a spin, and I moved about from Dallas to Austin, and I'm starting life here, but I have so many things that I had to get rid of, things, quote unquote, because I had to put my items in storage, and I'm living in a basic one room in a rented, you know, house, and I've learned a lot about things and the lack of need for them after all.
You know, we're using that system to come face to face and sit down meetings touching higher beings. So there you have it. We do it, you know, almost every week.
So get going with the training. It's the key to everything. I mean, outside of the alchemy, honestly, there's really no reason. There's no good reason to not be doing it. There just isn't. And that has to go too with, you know, with art. I mean, it's so weird to try to describe it. It's like, if you want to bring your true potential, ooh, whatever. I mean, if you want to, you know, truly master, you know, it's like, here, let me sell it for you. You know, let me put a wrapper on that Twinkie for you and make it more appealing. But the truth of the matter is that the greatest art is not going to be done by you. It's going to be done through you. And so you need to get to the source of it. And the only way that you can truly get to the source of it is to learn how to without your conscious efforts, to sidestep the analytical deductive mind that is constantly trying to perfect, according to its own bias, what it thinks perfection is. If it could just step out of the side and just allow the data, the true inspiration, the true imagination to flow through freely, then you would receive what it is that you are looking for. You would experience it, and it would be an effortless concern. But how do you get there? How do you do that? You know, how is that accomplished?
Get clear, get empty, and an acceptance of everything just as it is. You know, it's
that simple. Thank you.
Say that again, Jason.
Get clear, get empty, and get in total acceptance of everything just as it is. I'm going to write a book, by the way, and it's going to be pretty short because anything that tells the truth is going to be short. But it's going to be called The Simple Truth, and then that's going to become the other section on the Super Beings website, where, you know, you can sort of pick and choose how you want to get to truth. If you want to use the Schuper method, then you go with ABS, you know what I mean? Or you can avail yourself of the copious amounts of information that are under the mastery section, because that's all legit. Every bit of it's legit. All you got to do is practice it. Or you can go the simplest method of all, and that's just to know the truth. And that's why I'm going to write it. It was predicted that I would in the Blue Emerald days. Excuse me, Chance. I'll just go ahead and tell a little story here, and then I'll get back out of your way. The
No, please do.
We had a member named Rainbow Starchild, and she was from Sweden. She was from Stockholm, and first off, nobody could believe that was her real name. And then she chimed in one day, and I had before that asked her, "Is that your real name, by the way?" And she said, "Yeah, it actually is." And it turns out that she was the daughter of what's the word?
Shaman.
Illegitimate. Her parents weren't married, and so and
Love child.
a love child.
Love child.
And her mother was actually a nun in Germany.
Oh, great.
Oh.
And her father was her father was a Sami, and that's spelled Sami, and they are Nordic nomads, if you will, that are all over northern Sweden and Norway and Finland and things like that. And they're called the Sami people, and they're white, and they're very shamanic. And so she just chimed in one day on the Blue Emerald, and she said, "Well, my grandfather can disappear from one spot and reappear in another spot. Why should I believe anything you have to say?" And I said, "Why indeed? I mean, why aren't we learning from him? Does he want us to come up there and learn from him or something?" And I said, "I don't know why you would be on our website." You know what I mean? And
Gramps.
And interestingly enough, she was planning a trip there. And so she really just sort of kept us apprised of her progress in as far as she could, meaning that she went north on the train, and then she got to such and such place, and then I guess there is it's a kind of a known trek, and you arrive at the snow, and you put on horseshoes or skis, not horseshoes, snowshoes or skis, and then I think you have to walk like 60 or 80 miles or some crazy thing over the snow. And then there's a yurt where you get supplies, or a yurt, more than one yurt or something. I can't remember the details. And it took her, a good month to get there or something like that. And when she arrived, and this, of course, we all learned later, her father was just beginning his training in being able to focus his attention with the type of intensity needed to be able to disappear from one spot and reappear in another spot. And so she was having fun when she arrived, talking with both of her men folk and telling them about the Blue Emerald and things like that. And apparently they were both, especially her grandfather was a large enough mind to be able to look at it and just said, "That's a good thing going on there." And then as a part of an exercise, her father focused on me hard enough to be able to put his consciousness right here where I am. And, you can use a system like he used, or you can use something like the ABS in order to do that. That's the beauty of the ABS, is how you relocate your consciousness, bilocate your consciousness. And so when she got back, she thought that she would report, and she just said that her dad spent some time sort of with me and just said, "Your foot I know your foot bothers you, but you just keep trekking around those mountains, and you're going to find what you're looking for. And he knew that I had a fallen arch that's almost like a club foot. It's almost useless, and um, he apparently was clued into the fact that I did a lot of treasure hunting, and so he was kind of spot on. But what he finished with was that he said that guy is going to write something that is going to help a lot of people because it is the simple truth.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And so it's sort of cropped up of late because I did that post that was the what's the point post, and it was the first time anybody felt like talking about anything. And so it just instantly struck me as this is what people want to know. This is what they really want to know. They want to know how to tear through to truth and live simply and beautifully and cleanly and happily.
Exciting. Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
That was a great story.
Yeah, it was.
But yes, curiosity. I agree. Curiosity is the key to art.
So earlier, Jason said something like asking, why is it you are needed to bring that forth? And I'd like to ask Jason if he has any insight into the things. Does he get like a preview of what are the things that are to be precipitated next into this common reality or this common experience? Like, are we on the verge of getting free or new forms of electricity?
What do you mean by we?
Everybody in my world.
I don't really get previews, and every time that I would, and I really could if I wanted to, the admonishment is instantly stay in the moment, period, and that really is what everybody needs, is to stay in the moment. But I don't know how much you read on the super beings, but we are here to just help people make the selfless or selfish choice, and then we're out of here and we're gone. And they move on to 4D, and that's really all there is to it. Now, if there is going to be the types of technologies to which I believe you're referring,
right.
there is going to be some absolutely amazing stuff in the next 10 years.
And we're on the cusp of a massive transformation of society.
Yeah. It's happening with extraordinary speed now.
Is that what's happening in your presidential primaries?
hey, just because you live north of the border doesn't make it my presidential primary.
Welcome to the circus,
it was so
baby.
funny.
Hey, just don't be jealous.
The fact is that there really is us and them. There's us who are awake, and there's them who need to make all their own choices in their 3D world and get on with it so they can get on into their 4D world.
It's so funny. I drove my little brother and his friend to a Bernie Sanders rally today in Salt Lake, and we were just totally talking about this, and I was like, well, I think, he was like, why aren't you voting? And I was like, because I just don't care, and I don't think it's real. And he was like, what? And it was kind of just, we just butted heads for an hour, and it was funny. It was fun. So.
Yeah, that's the other part of the equation that I think sometimes can trip people up is, you're here having a personal experience, but it's for the purposes of allowing you to maintain cohesion, right? But that ultimately, the world is sometimes a thing that's just happening around you, and everyone else is running around with their heads cut off, doing things that makes no sense and seems completely primitive and backwards and just completely asinine, but good. That's not our concern. That's not really what we're here for. Like monitors on the playground. We're just here to hold the space so they can play.
When I figured that out, it was such a relief.
Yeah, when I read that in Dolores Umbridge, right? Her book that was suggested to us, it was such a relief. I was just like, wow.
And that makes it easier to do my job because I'm not attached to the outcomes of there needing to be a presidential nominee that I relate to, or it just takes a lot of pressure off somehow to just, it frees up your energy to just focus on, what you're doing here, what your role is, and how you can be of service. Because it's whatever's going to go down on Earth, they're going to work it out. It's not like we've got eternity to play with. And the scale of things has to be taken into consideration, like the cosmic scale of what's happening. And I don't, I just don't feel like I need to save it anymore.
Right, that's the game.
All right. Sorry I brought it up.
No, that's good.
No,
I
no.
mean, it was going to go there. I mean, I know the world right now has got their jaw hanging open, just going like, is this for real? Is this really happening? And it is. Well, it isn't, but yeah, the story is calling for some pretty funny stuff. Pretty absurd
What would
things.
you surmise that Donald Trump's layers are?
That is scary.
I don't know. I think he's a. I saw some.
There aren't enough wigs.
What is the deal? I watched this pretty funny. The comic Dilbert, the guy who does Dilbert, had a breakdown of like Donald Trump and how he's actually a mastermind wizard that uses a lot of he uses a lot of manipulative salesman technique to get people
to see who they are.
Oh, I don't know. He's just using persuasive technique, like kind of some magical stuff, businessman stuff, and that's why he's got the media kind of confused,
mesmerized.
Yeah, confused.
Yeah,
mesmerized.
It's not hard to mesmerize a dog. You just need some raw meats.
Wow.
And these guys are pretty good. Like they're like conditioned to like be able to just talk about things a certain way, and that like grabs people's attention, based on all of the social conditioning. I don't know, that's how I feel, like this, the whole play that they're showing to people is kind of really developed, and like they know kind of what they're doing, and it works, like a lot of people really get into it, and that's what makes it so funny, right? So
the game is actually really simple. Pick a side. Fight the other one. That's it.
And they take turns, but they're not really. But they're not really in control of anything. And there's increasing levels that all think they're in control, and they're not in control. The dark isn't even in control.
Oh no!
But it's funny to think, it's funny to see how grand, like the charade is, like how big, like it gets that, to just kind of laugh at, because it's pretty clever. I'm not gonna lie, like it's amazing to see this stuff, and just, it's like, wow, this is where we're at, and You know, if you ever studied history or whatever, you're just like, wow, it keeps changing, and that's always the way it's going to be, you know, so. Cool.
The grand distraction.
I have a self-reflective question. How do I know I'm awake?
You asked that question.
Have you ever heard the gambling question? If you're sitting at a table playing poker with somebody and you're wondering who the weakest player is, it's you.
It's you.
Wow.
And so it works.
Good.
It works precisely the same way. You know, you will know. And so until you do, just trust the fact that you're not.
Right.
Yeah. I remember pressing my cheek against the veil years fondly. And then it was just, wait. And you turn around and it's just like, well, okay. That was fun.
But it's like the word awake seems to imply a finality, though. Like it's like
right, because they are levels, right?
Like it's the end all be all, and is it something that you can arrive at kind of gradually, or is it like, or to where you're slightly awake but still kind of asleep, in the morning, like you could just drift back off, or so the semantics give us problems, I think, in terms of trying to conceptualize or understand it. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Chance. Go ahead.
No. I like lucidity better, right? Because lucidity doesn't require that finality. It has that concept or that air of continuity or something being continuous. You're not like you're not permitted to violate the conditions of the dream, but you can be lucid within them. You can be, you can emerge from the completeness of the veil that enshrouds you in sleep, in the delusion of self. You can do that, but you're not going to dispatch from reality. You're not, physically, you're not going to be permitted to do that, because there's other work at hand. It's like spend all this time doing the best to quote unquote move beyond the self to finally to realize, hey, you know what? It's not about you. Get back in there. But this is great, everybody.
Like a player leaving the stage, going backstage, and they're like, "What are you doing? Get back on stage! Like you're blind." Like, oh, sorry, I was just so preoccupied with trying to get past this whole "this is a play" thing, and yeah.
Right. No, that's great. I can totally envision, Hamlet on the stage, like, to be. What am I doing here? It's like, dude, finish the line. Everybody's waiting.
To be.
Wait, I need to call. It's okay.
To be, or what the hell was I gonna say?
Oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh right, yeah, that's one of the favorite things that actually Jason's told me, the true identity of William Shakespeare. If anyone was ever really curious, and I think to some degree we all should be, because it's Shakespeare. No.
It was Edward de Vere.
Edward?
Is who?
Edward de Vere. I think it was Edward. It was the de Vere family. I know that.
No, it was. I've verified it in a session. It's true.
It's they're a major secret society family, and there's a modern de Vere writing even as we speak, but he's a bit of an asshole.
Like the Diamond person? Is that the Diamond family?
No, that's De Vere.
Vere.
De Vere is spelled D-E space V-E-R-E.
Okay. I thought it was,
All right.
what is his name again? Oh my gosh.
If you look at his, the portraits of him, he does bear something of a resemblance to the very few portraits of Shakespeare.
I thought it was Saint Germain, actually.
Well, that's what was a common belief, but that sort of got sorted out. A ton of what is believed about Saint Germain is just absolute hogwash.
So tell us the true stuff.
Yeah, like what?
You mean because of the I am teachings? Did a lot of
exactly.
they were defrauded pretty good.
Yeah, someone else's car, so I left after 2 hours. Just opened the station.
Hey Stan, you gotta mute. You gotta mute yourself.
Really?
Have you guys ever read the book Adventure with a Mystic? Adventure of a Mystic. It's this guy Peter. Oh, what's the name of that mountain? Well, Peter something, and he's describing his whole adventure with Saint Germain. Peter Mount Shasta is his name.
Peter Mount Shasta, yeah.
He wrote a 600-page book.
Well, that's another of those things. It's like, from the highest perspective, Shakespeare was both, who was once known as Saint Germain. Because I'm not even convinced that Francis Bacon was Saint Germain, to tell you the truth. I think Saint Germain is the result of an idea, and I think that's where he comes from completely, as just as an idea. And for years I was in daily touch with that entity, and so I finally reached the point where I myself didn't need to make any sort of line of delineation between, whether I'm communicating with a fictional idea or somebody that has a historical context, because both of them are fictional ideas. And so, you can, all the way back to, I believe it was Shirley that brought it up, you can conjure into being just by thinking anybody to communicate with, and you can be almost assured that being, so long as they aren't in physical form, is going to be smarter than you are.
Well, the thing that brought that up was that the guy was talking about Galen, the early physician, and the earliest known description of cancer was back in Egypt, and he was talking about the different biles, and he was talking about black bile, and the physicians focusing on what is black bile, what does it do, why is it here, and all those things, and the guy used the word. Therefore, in that focus on black bile, they conjured up a form of cancer that didn't exist until their focus brought it forth, and that's where the word conjure triggered me, in that they got an unexpected result by their focus.
Right. Which is precisely.
So how many other things do we conjure up
like
that
that
never existed before? Yeah.
All of it. It's, modern medicine works exactly the same way, and all it is an extension of that dark magic. So what they did is they falsified some risk analyses, and then people come in and say, well, you have markers for colon cancer, and then that's the moment at which the patient contracts the disease.
Oh, I know.
Is that because all that needs to activate it is their emotion of fear?
It doesn't require fear so long as it is believed. And so doctors are putting themselves, the whole industry has put doctors on a pedestal of being, wise and caring and wiser than you, and
authoritative.
And authoritative, and in reality, all they are is a kiosk for pharmaceutical companies.
What a good word, kiosk.
That is a great word.
That's so true. Word of choice. Yeah.
Well, it just does bring like a necessary focus on the power of your thoughts and your moods and your attitudes. They just don't go anywhere. It's not like you're driving and then you can just roll down the window and toss out a wrapper and it's just taken care of by the noise, the background noise. It has consequence. It does stuff. This is the strangest thing that I found about being here is, well, of course, all of the mechanisms, the apparatus of quote unquote existence that has to be in place, not really to manifest a reality. It's not really here for that. It's just to keep you from being aware of who you really are. Because once you're convinced that you're nothing else but who you are, then selling you on this reality is the easiest job there is, But getting you from waking up, that's the trick. Getting you from realizing, your true nature, that's the hard sell. That's the hard sell. And it takes a lot of work just to do that. But it's the most amazing thing to see that at work, to see how it functions, And one of those things that is part of that is just kind of like this careless or this absent-minded, relationship with one's own thoughts and perspectives and the consequence of invoking the most powerful thing that you have, which is your awareness and where you place it and what you do with it, as though thinking that somehow there's an innocence behind it or to it because you didn't mean it. It's like, no, you did that. You really did that. It really happened. And you've got blood on your hands, there's culpability there, and someone's got to go clean it up. Someone has to attend to that. It's part of this. It's part of the structure. It's part of the system. But your thoughts have consequence, real consequence.
So isn't distraction the key component in any game whatsoever, because it distracts us from who we are and puts our focus elsewhere?
Yeah, which is why The Secret came into being.
Actually, the whole New Age movement.
It's why Catholicism came into being.
Any system of control.
Yes, distraction, on all levels.
Basically, all of society.
If you look at the multiplicity of purpose for the formation of the Catholic Church, while on the face of it would seem to have been created by a bunch of evil people, and in fact it was, and yet the biggest reason that Catholicism was created was in order to lead the world to technology.
Technology?
Yep.
Wow.
But what about the Dark Ages and stuff? Weren't they? We went.
If you hadn't had the Dark Ages, paganism would have lived on, and we would still all be running around in forests naked, having a good time. But instead,
I see them doing that on TV still.
You have this mechanized industrial technological society because of the Catholic Church, and it was an extremely necessary step for this experiment to go into, with the whole plan being to time it so that the reawakening of the so-called divine feminine, I hate using words like that because there isn't anything that's not divine, but the reawakening of the feminine was timed for this passage into this section in space. So you're bringing it, this brutally male historical path back together with the feminine path. and the result is going to be absolutely magnificent. And we're kind of entering into it pretty much as we speak.
Yes.
I think about sometimes like the supposed bad guys and stuff. I wonder if any of them are clued into how the really big picture, right? And if they are fully aware that they're actually
They are.
serving this 100%, like are they, or are some just like totally relishing their,
Well,
whatever
they too have to be
fascist
kept
role?
blind, or they're not going to carry out their role.
Right.
That's
Right.
just all there is to it. And so it's, why does a serial killer kill? Well, because he's needed to help people move on to 4D, right? And so why? I can tell you this: those that are waking up are waking up. Even the dark guys, because it's like we've talked about in the top of world management. You've got people who are good friends and brothers and sisters looking at each other across the desk. One's for the light, and one's for the dark, and the sheer number of agendas going on is absolutely mind-boggling to begin with. But once somebody of the so-called dark sees that all of their efforts have been done nothing but to help the light, they give up.
Right, because there's no point.
They got nowhere to go.
But
That's the part that's always kind of amused me the most about that entire the structure of existence in the game is just that notion of like, you realize for every action there's an equal but opposite reaction. Anything you do just invites the same from the quote unquote other side. So whatever dominance or perceived triumph that one side, the victory one perceives to have attained, just simply brings the level of the game to balance itself back out and move forward to its next stage. There's no prevailing, so long as the simulation itself is maintained, there's no quote unquote winning. It just simply moves, quote unquote moves forward. It just evolves within itself. It moves to its next epic. But that idea, of course, is just, it's necessary to be there in order for people to play.
Didn't R. Lee one time bring up something where he was talking about people that were doing something they perceived as like a really good deed, and it was done kind of, there was some balance that needed to be struck.
The light chasers brought too much light. The whole wide world of the love and light crowd, they overdid it. They didn't know it, but they overdid it.
Straight out of context.
Right. That was one of the biggest things for me to grok, was like that that light didn't necessarily mean love, and love doesn't mean light.
Right.
Those were not synonymous terms. That really blew me away.
Yeah, and it points to like the temperament, if I could use that word, or the true nature of like the true self. It doesn't have a side. It's both sides.
It's the middle path.
Right. It's the middle path. It's utilizing both players, the light and the dark, to achieve what it wants, which is what we want, which is just what we're doing, we're just curious.
It's actually neither in, at the innermost, but both at the second layer out from there on. You see what I'm saying? You've got nothing or something, and nothing, it's neither, and something, it's both.
From the beginning, we're pretty much hammered, it's hammered into your head that God is good. And a lot of, they do. That's what it said. It's like God is good, and then Satan is evil, and therefore everybody else falls into these categories, and everybody's striving in a like dualistic frame of mind, and it didn't explain a lot of things. for a lot of people are like, why does God let good things happen to good people, or no, bad things happen to good people? Yeah, that's what I meant.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. You know what I meant? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the components.
It's part of the program. It's part of the programming rules.
That's beautiful.
Right.
Well, and the truth is God has nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? It's if a mind of that magnitude sat back and tried to plan out the path of all the minions, and we're the minions. That's why you can turn an experiment loose, but all you do is you give the experiment itself both initial conditions and strictures beyond which it cannot go. That way you can keep it under control. And so, for all intents and purposes, you could say that the Earth has been something of a near runaway dream, and that's what's been so untenable about it, because it is not that easy of a thing to safely poke holes in that dream and establish communication with the those in the dream who don't know that they're just a dream. and who you're going to choose to communicate with, and so on and so forth. It isn't easy to do. It takes tremendous planning, and it takes the sun has to sign off on it, and in terms of how when somebody is to be conceived, and so that their birth is planned. So you've got the sun sign astrology part of it, and so I mean, it's easy to couch it in the types of terms that we all understand, and that's, for instance, let's say that you set out right now to get so good at leaving your body that you could actually choose whose dreams to enter, right? And let's say that you do that, and Ekankar, that's a religion right now. That's what they do. That's all they do, and but the level of training and understanding that is needed by those that are in its upper reaches, if you will, is stunning, because the one thing that they know is that if you enter into somebody's dream, you might scare them so bad it changes them for the rest of their life.
That's probably why people don't remember their abduction experiences. It would be too disruptive.
Well, the real work's being done anyway, and so whether or not they remember is sort of beside the point, but that it's all coming out of the closet now is planned. It's a wholesale plan on a big level, one that I'm involved in, by the way, where the information that is necessary for people to be able to forgive it and accept it and turn it into a fear-free experience has all been carefully orchestrated.
Right, and it's important to mention also that fear is one of the ways by which that this experiment has been so successful.
Exactly.
The way that we've been able to utilize it to well, quote unquote, manipulate, but really to guide, various larger currents of the gestalt of the populace.
That's why that's why it's so embedded at the machine level code of this particular plane. It's it's at the machine level. You can't be in this and not have fear,
right? Or doubt, and other things. But
get your attention, that's for sure.
But that's what this level is for,
right? And that's important to mention too, because let's say I could say where you come from, and somehow that would make sense when I said it, right? Where you truly come from, you don't have fear, right? Where you truly come from, you don't have doubt, you don't experience those things. The the banal, the mundane, the wiping your butt, the stubbing your toe, these things you take for granted that you disregard, these uniquely unexceptional human moments, they're huge accomplishments. They are the equivalent of like experiential diamonds. They're gems of experience. They're except within an experiential domain such as this one. Even in its most mundane and unimpressive aspects, it's a huge accomplishment on every single level. Trash on the side of the road, people flipping off each other, and meaning it as though it meant something, as though somehow they were pointing at somebody else when they did it, as though they thought it wouldn't affect them when they did, feeling righteous in the process, not realizing that they're looking in the mirror. It's a tremendous success, right? So I think it's worth pointing that out. It's worth sharing that idea, playing with that concept. If you think that you're supposed to be someone else or someone better, right? Or somehow you're not living the life that you're supposed to, as though that were somehow possible, that you weren't exactly what was planned, right? As though you had somehow quote unquote failed, as though that were possible, right? It's just not true. On any level, it's not true. I mean, when you see the intricate, the infinite mechanism of existence and everything that goes into play to make the most basic of things, it's just not possible that somehow you were overlooked, right? But that psychology, that emotion, that experience is also part of a larger process, and it's not somehow there to attack you in a sense, but to be part of the mixture, to have its role to play in a quote unquote perceived self-development, which is entirely fictional, but it renders cohesion to your experience. It gives authenticity to the illusion of yourself, right? Because if you didn't believe it, you wouldn't be able to do your job. On some level, somehow level you do. At some point, you don't believe it anymore, but it doesn't affect you because you accept it, right? You don't need to believe it anymore. You just accept it, right? Instead of having to be supported by a network of falsity and lies, you just see the truth, and you see that there's no distinction between the thing that you would separate yourself from and who you are. It's the same thing, right? But it's worth mentioning.
Thanks for that, Jen.
That was great. Nice.
Chance has been really
Paul,
cool.
It's almost midnight. I'm gonna leave.
Wow.
Good night, Paul.
It was fun.
Thanks, Paul.
It was fun.
Thank you so much for participating.
Okay,
I'm more confused.
Give yourself stuff to think about and play with.
Then we've done our job.
That's right. Mission accomplished.
And I found out I'm not awake.
I learned a lot tonight.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, well, Paul, we'll see you in dreams, bro.
Okay.
Good night.
Good
night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Good night. Thanks for playing.
It was
Thank
fun.
you. Time to go bowling.
We'll do this again next Friday.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks for everybody. And of course to
Thank you.
Jason and Mary, the awesomeness that is.
Thank you, Jason and Mary.
I love you guys. I love you guys.
Yeah. I love you guys.
All you all.
That's right, y'all.
Right.
Good night already, all right?
Good night, John Boy.
Good
night, Mom.
You hang up
No,
first.
you
No,
hang
you
up.
hang up.
Yes, you hang up. No, you do it.
That's so funny.
I don't want to.
I
You
don't
guys
want to
are
because you'll
silly.
feel so great.
Yeah.
All right. This
5
is
more
for
minutes,
real.
Mom.
Love you. Bye.
Serious.
Encore. Encore.
Good night.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Boom.
Hang up.
Boom.
Good night.
Okay, peace.
That's awesome. You guys are so awesome. All right. Well, that concludes the first edition of Transmissions from the Galactic Core. Thanks for playing.